Let's go, Rider Nation.
I'm ready. I'm ready. Yeah, here we go. Get your feeling now. Get 'em high, get 'em low, 'cause we're dealing now. Everybody's giving it all they got, 'cause we're ready.
This is the Piffles Podcast, your Saskatchewan Roughriders fan podcast. Thanks for joining us here this week. You got me. I'm Alex.
I'm Steve.
And I'm here to remind you, a vote for Brady is a vote for anarchy.
We are going to talk about our campaign promises. I promise a few things with this Rolan Milligan for MLP campaign, and you're going to find out about those in just a little bit. But this is your Saskatchewan Roughriders fan podcast. Give us a follow on X at Piffles Pod. I'm at Real Alex D.
I'm Safamad.
And as always, I do not need nor want your pity follows at Greg on Sports.
Check us out on Facebook as well, and the website, pifflespodcast.com. Thanks for listening wherever you find your favorite podcasts, listening on YouTube or watching on SAS Telemax TV on demand. We appreciate that very much. Piffles Podcast is brought to you by our great friends at Dairy Queen on Elphinstone Street and SAS Drive in Regina. 290 episodes. We're only 10 away from 300. We should probably plan something for that.
Yeah, we're
'Cause
going
we
to
don't
plan a
anything
Grey
else.
Cup victory.
No, I was going to
parade.
say, we work better on the seat of our pants. Like this entire Milligan campaign has just been, hey, let's do this.
Just-
Okay, when
just
can we
like-
do that? No!
Just like the Jesus Sprinkle shirts, just boom, like that, right? Exactly how this campaign's going.
Yep.
Okay, well, Riders win last week, beat Edmonton, make the playoffs, and just that weight is off the shoulders. It just feels so good. Let's talk about that. It's the opening kickoff. So the Riders beat the Elks last week in Edmonton, 28-24, moving their record to 8-7-1, clinching a playoff spot, their first one since 2021, where they got to the West Final in Winnipeg, and honestly probably should have won that game.
Mm-hmm.
This game, though, their third straight win. I don't want to say start heating up, but they're winning at the right time here, getting hot towards the playoffs, even though they're all nail biters and close games. I got to ask this, because sports fans, and myself included, take more joy in other teams' misery than they do in their own team's success. This is the first time since 1945, when the Calgary Stampeders entered the CFL, that no Alberta teams will be in the playoffs, which is a wild stat to me. Does that make you happier than just clinching the playoffs? Because I'm not quite at that level, but I'm close to it.
I'm 100% at that level. I don't care so much about Edmonton. They've kind of been floundering for a little while. But we have been calling for Calgary's demise since this show started in 2016? It's about damn time. Absolutely. We've made the playoffs several times in that stretch. We've done this before. We haven't seen the Stampeders miss the playoffs since George Bush was president?
Kevin Federick was the owner, and Matt Dunnigan was the head coach.
I
Good times
absolutely
back
take
then.
more satisfaction in Calgary missing the playoffs. And that we did it. We officially knocked them out with some help from Edmonton being so bad.
We technically knocked out like almost three teams, because Hamilton's got a hard road to hoe to make the playoffs now. It's wild to think that the Stamps are missing the playoffs. And yeah, I'm both. I'm both very happy we finally made the playoffs, which feels like forever, even though it's only been like 3 years. But I think it was those last 2 years of just getting beat down. This team just can't get over the hump. But really, I'm more happy that my 7.5 wins finally covered. Because after the first 5 wins, I was like, yes, this is easy. And then, oh my Lord, was I like just white knuckling these last couple games here.
part of me kind of wanted to see what would have happened if they went 7-10-1 and had 7.5 wins. It would have been funny on that little.
I'm hoping it was a push, but yeah, I don't know. That was just. But I still can't believe it took that long after getting 5 wins to get to 8 wins. It was just,
yeah.
It was just
how
wild.
long have you been a Rider fan? And you're surprised that that's how this season went. Nothing is ever easy in Rider Nation.
They started that hot. Hey, I grew up through many 99 seasons. I enjoy a 99 Rider team. That is Rider football. But when you start that hot and just all of a sudden 7 games you can't find a win no matter what you do, it's kind of nerve-wracking.
You saying 99 reminded me that we need to talk about the Plaza of Honor and Roy Shivers in a little bit. I totally forgot about that. Well, this game against Edmonton, I'm going to throw some things out to you guys. You guys give me your reaction on it because we've all seen it. We all know what happened. I want to get your thoughts on Trevor Harris for one, because when he was on, he was on. But when he was bad, that's when you saw those interceptions. Does this worry you guys going, into the playoff here?
No. Trevor Harris, especially since he's come back from injury, he's made some real bonehead throws. They're you can tell, and this was in their losing skid, that he was one of those guys that really was trying to force the issue. He was trying to lead this team to victory, and in doing so was making really bad mistakes. But when he's comfortable, when he has time, and he doesn't need that much time, he's one of the quickest releases in the game. He's finding guys. He's throwing those darts. Like, very few balls did he mismanage, but the ones that he did, his receivers bailed him out on. So I'm not that concerned. But once again, we've talked about before, Trevor Harris, great between the 20s. It's just when he's on either side of him, I don't know, something flicks a switch.
Well, that's what I was going to say. This game was the perfect example of Trevor Harris as a quarterback. You look at the 2 touchdowns, 28-yarder to Keyshawn Johnson, and the 88-yarder to Samuel Emilus. Great plays. The Keyshawn Johnson was more a great play on Johnson's side than Trevor Harris, but everything else kind of in the middle, you had some of those worries. That between the 20s thing, we've joked about it since, again, we've started this show when we talked about Trevor Harris, but he proves it time and time again. At least they found the end zone a couple of times. They weren't relying on 7 field goals by Brett Lothar. So worried, no. Slightly nervous. I'll go with that. I'll go with that level.
I thought you mentioned that touchdown to Sam Emilus. I thought he had the best game of the season. Obviously, an 88-yard catch and run for a touchdown, amplifies that. But it was the way that they responded with that touchdown. It was a 1-0 game into the second. It was a boring game. Edmonton drives down, scores. Oh boy. Okay. This is really, you guys are going to do this against a team that's, basically out of the playoffs. And then they responded. They got that big long touchdown and it was okay, here we go. And that's what I've noticed about this team is the resiliency. And I've wrote about it for the website. We've talked about it on this show, is that whenever a team gets up on them, they find the right back. They never seem like they're out of a game. And obviously Trevor Harris is a big part of that. And it just goes to show that to me, that comes down to coaching and having these guys ready. And generally speaking, they've been ready for every single game. So to see them respond was a couple times in that game was very, very important to me.
But really, I'm surprised it has been brought up by other fans. Was it really fair that Emilus pulled a smokescreen on that touchdown? That was so wild looking at those camera shots. I'm like, what is going on? Apparently, the Elks, when they scored their touchdown, thought it was the 90s and the Monday Nitro because they put enough pyro to smoke out the entire stadium.
They blew their whole fireworks.
Entire season's worth of pyro to get rid of in one game. So,
I want your thoughts on Keyshawn Johnson because that catch that was the epitome of you got mossed. which I'm sure we'll see on Straight Fire this upcoming week in the CFL on TSN. And I have a rant. I got a rant about CFL on TSN. That's coming later because it's time to move on. But anyway, Keyshawn Johnson. To me, he's the clear number one in this receiving group. Would you guys agree with that?
100%. Like right now, he's the most consistent receiver. Sam Emilus, who should be right now in KSB this year's because of injuries. Emilus has had the case of the drops every once in a while. He looked more Emilus than he has been this last game than he has been all season. But Keyshawn has been the most consistent receiver that we've had all season, with the possible exception of Dante Myers, who's on the injury list right now.
Yeah, we talked about it during the game after that touchdown catch. He's absolutely he should be the number one guy right now. He's been nothing but stellar since he took the field. And we talked about him as soon as he came up here, that he just looked like he had that, whatever it is, right out of the gate. And
It factor.
that it factor, absolutely.
The je ne sais quoi?
Yeah, that's the one I was going for. I just don't know what that means. But it's we've lucked out between him and Dante Myers coming in due to injury and absolutely tearing it up from the gate. Our receiving core, if we can keep them around for a few years, is a little scary, and in a good way, not a
Calgary.
scary we suck kind of way.
But here's the thing, though. Like, you have to think, like, Keyshawn Johnson and Dante Myers outplayed Jarrett Stearns. Jarrett Stearns comes back in, and him and Trevor Harris found that magic immediately again. Stearns was one of Harris's best or favorite targets this past week. Like, we said it all season, the depth on this receiving chart is nuts. And you look at it's DDB, Dale Duncan Busby. Like,
You got your reference in this week.
I
You were
finally
upset
got
you
that
didn't do
reference in. Yeah. But he was behind Picton, he was behind Joe due to injury, and he's come in and looks like he's been playing all season. Like, there's a ton of depth on this receiving core, and they might have to make some hard decisions next year, or maybe they finally won't draft another Canadian receiver for a while.
No, they'll draft 3 again. It's what they
Well,
do.
we've seen how important that is, though, because if you're going to roll with 3, and you're going to need 5 or 6 of them, so I mean that we were saying all going into this year's draft, we don't need more receivers. We're good. Well, turns out they did. So
Yeah,
maybe
drafted
these
3.
guys actually know how to do their job, right?
No, that's not what the internet tells me about O'Day.
Yeah. I want to see Keyshawn Johnson treated like a true alpha, though, in a receiving group. Because while the ball is getting spread around and you have that depth, which is important, and anybody could pop off at any moment, which makes this offense just that more dangerous. Imagine if he got 10, 12 targets a game like Geno Lewis gets. This guy is a second down converter. He's a big play guy. He can do it all. And right now, he's our best player on offense, and give him the ball. We said this after, I think it was the first game, both him and Dante Myers played together, both had over 100 yards. Just feed them. These two guys are electric. Just give them the ball. So, I don't know. I'd like to see him get more consistent targets because he's making big plays regardless of how many targets he's getting. But if he gets treated like a true number 1 in the CFL, then, I mean, watch out. One more thing on the offense from this game was the run game, or lack thereof. Is this a Frankie Hickson thing, or is this a Mark Mueller play calling thing? Because outside of, a couple games where AJ at the beginning of the year had a decent amount of yards, but it was on a lot of carries, and Raquel Armstead's game against Calgary, the run game just hasn't been there this year.
To me, it comes across as them playing to that offensive line strength when we've had such a patchwork offensive line through basically the entire season. It feels like they're choosing to go with that quick pass game as opposed to a lot of run heavy games. You haven't seen very many 20, plus carry games. And it seems like the moment a guy falters, like Frankie Hickson did this week, his first couple of carries didn't really amount to much. They step away from the run game and try to ride the pass game. But you have a game like they did in Calgary where Armstead just lit it up from the go, and they rode that hot hand. It feels to me like that's what they're doing, is they're testing it out to start and kind of riding with what's working and not changing it up, which can be scary against some of your better teams. We have played weaker teams during this win streak. I don't think that kind of strategy works against a Winnipeg or a BC or a Montreal.
But here's the thing: if you have a patchwork offensive line, it's better to go with the running game, because that way your offensive line are attacking as opposed to sitting back and waiting for the rush. So I would hope that's not their strategy into it. I think a lot of the run game at the beginning of the year is AJ was not healthy at all. Like, he was banged up from the get-go, and that didn't help. And Hickson, he likes to scat out. He's not a north-south runner. One thing difference between AJ and Raquel compared to Hickson, like, they're straight north and south, and Hickson likes to kick it outside. And I can tell you, watching, especially the way I watch the Thunder, when they have a two-headed monster like Sadiq and Ryland Leichert's straight up and down, and you can tell the difference. And then Sadiq always tries to go outside. And the Thunder offensive line are better blocking forward than they are trying to kick it to the outside. And that's just the way offensive line are built. So,
well, and what I'm seeing with the Riders' run game is that when they run it off tackle, that's where they have the most success. Doesn't matter who the running back was. When they're trying to run it in the A and the B gaps, like, it's just not there. But when they run it on the right side with the two American offensive linemen, whether it's Jacob Rammer or Nick Jones, and then it's Trayvon Tate at tackle, that's where they have the most success. It's when they start trying to run left that they're running into some issues. And Trevor Reed's been fantastic at left tackle, especially pass protection, but run blocking hasn't been his strong suit this year. And then when you combine that with, I feel like Mark Mueller's play calling in the run game is very lackluster. It's predictable. If I can see it on TV in the stands where you're running, you have your 5 linemen, you have your 6th lineman in, you have a tight end like Alberto Wachi in there to block, you have a receiver right beside them, and then 2 of your receivers on the outside are coming crashing in pre-snap. Like, it's going to be a run up the middle. If I can see that, imagine what the defenses are seeing, right? So I'd like to see them spread out the offense and run the ball a little bit more that way. I think you'll probably have more lanes that way. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I'm not a coach. I don't do the film work, all that kind of stuff, but maybe that's something we see when AJ Ouellette and Raquel Armstead are both healthy. Maybe that's something that we see in the next coming weeks. I don't know, but
I'm hoping also they're keeping the run game fairly vanilla and keeping some good stuff for the playoffs when the running game is going to be most important. Don't give the opponents film of stuff you want to use in the playoffs. That's rule number 1 of football.
Well, let's jump to the defense. And this was a defense that had ups and downs again, but made big plays when it mattered. Obviously, the Amari Henderson forced fumble at the end of the game with a great peanut punch, knocking the ball out of the receiver's hand. And CJ Rivas coming up with the ball basically to seal the game. I thought the best player on the field, honestly, was Brian Cox Jr. for the Riders defense. And he was getting some pressure. There wasn't a lot of quarterback pressure on MBT, but even dropping into coverage and playing against the run, I thought Cox Jr. was the best player on defense.
I think he scored that way too, actually. I think he was our only pro.
He was the honor roll. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the defense, I'm sure we're going to talk about our favorite player here shortly, so I'll leave him alone. But Adam Auclair has actually had a quite good season this year. He's actually been a very sneaky, very good signing from this offseason. I was a little looking at our American linebackers at the beginning of the season. We thought we were going to run 3 Americans, but Auclair has been very, very good in that spot.
I got to give a shout out to CJ Rivas. Outside of just the obvious fumble recovery, to me, he was all over the field on Saturday night. I think he ended up with 9 tackles, if I remember correctly. He was just an absolute beast from start to finish. He was
and he's lucky he was in that game. He was lucky he got to stay in that game.
Very lucky. Yeah. After the Edmonton touchdown, and he was getting blocked past the whistle, got his helmet ripped off. He threw a punch back, which maybe it was more of a slap, so that's why they didn't throw him out of the game. But he probably should have
at the beginning of the year, though. Furlan's was a slap at the beginning of the year too. Like I can't believe they didn't kick him out, and the way he played, I'm glad they didn't. But I think all 3 of us at the same time said, well, that's one way to keep that dirty narrative going.
I'm actually surprised to see we didn't hear more about that from opposing fans that night.
If he got kicked out of the game, we would have heard about it. But
totally.
Because it didn't,
totally.
and it was early in the game, they forgot about it.
Okay, well, we'll talk about him. The best player in the CFL this year. The person who should be the most outstanding player, Rolan Milligan. Again, another interception, leading the league after Tyrell Ford of Winnipeg tied him. He was like, nah, this is mine, and took the interception lead back. And it was another great play by kind of baiting MBT and just seemingly coming out of nowhere for the interception. This guy's unreal. The season he's having it's outstanding. There's no other word for it. And that should be the MOP. So I'll give it to you guys. What did you think of Rolan Milligan in this game?
The dude has been the most consistent player in any position this year. He is, and we're fighting with everyone online about this, and I really don't care at this point. He's leading in tackles. He's leading in knockdowns. He's leading in takeaways. He's leading in special teams tackles. Like, this man is playing an outstanding year, and because of basically offensive bias, I always talk about the fancy stats. The fancy stats are the sexy stats. Everyone loves pointing to touchdowns and yards and all this, but right now all Brady's got is yards, and that's it. Meanwhile, Rolan is like just checking off boxes, and is like, oh, he's okay. And they're like, well, he might not even be the best defensive player. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, Beveret's having a good season, yes. And is he going to be the East nominee? Yes. But Roland's having a most outstanding player season, not just outstanding defensive player. Like, of the entire league, he's the best player. And it's just blowing my mind that I'm having this argument every day this week.
There's no question right now that he is, to me, the best player in the CFL. To have a defensive back sitting 5th in the league in tackles, despite teams throwing away from him for the majority of football games, tells you how integral he is to this defense. And if you watch any play, I ask you to pick any play from that game defensively, and when that whistle goes, if Milligan isn't in on the tackle, he is 2 yards away or less. He is the one guy that's running to every play and has been since day one of the season, special teams and defensively. He is, when you look at it, and I know you've talked about this, Alex, it's not the most valuable player. It is the most outstanding player. And what he is doing has never been done before in CFL history. If that is not the definition of outstanding, I don't know what is. Meanwhile, Brady, the likely, other guy in the West, is having a worse season than last year when he did not win the award. And they think that that's good enough.
The thing of it, and consistency was the word that both of you guys used. He's been the most consistent player all year. And when you look at what Brady Oliveira is doing, and no slight against him at all, other than his 4 touchdowns, but that's because Steve's friend Chris took all those touchdowns at the goal line from him.
Should have punched in on his own.
But Brady's been building up. He might be the best player in the CFL right now over the last couple games, but for the whole season, he's not. And yes, you need to, obviously, everybody wants to get better as the season goes on, and Brady's done that, but nothing he's done. Like, I mean, I feel anybody can run behind that offensive line. When they start doing their bully ball, they've been doing it for years. It was Andrew Harris. Johnny Augustine has had some big games doing that. Like, anybody can run behind that offensive line, it seems. And I mean, nothing against Brady, but he just seems to be the benefactor of that to me. And when you see a defensive back putting up the number, like you mentioned Beverett having a good season, that's from the linebacker position. That's from a cover linebacker position. Usually there's a lot of stats involved in that. That's why you lead the league in tackles. You have a lot of, stuff around the ball, right? Rolan Milligan's doing this covering the best receivers in the game. Your linebacker is not doing that. That is not his job.
Well, it's also easy on offense because you're right, you have the ball. It is the offensive's job to stay away from Rolan Milligan. It is your job to stay away from the best defensive player in the league. That is what they're supposed to do. And they're trying to do it, and they're not doing it well. So he needs to be seriously in the conversation. And don't get me wrong, I am glad this has kind of left our sphere and is now reaching out to where they're actually talking about it realistically on TSN about it.
Dustin Nielsen was talking about it at the end of the game, him and Glenn Suter. And Nielsen was saying he's been on this train since like week 5. So it's clearly a thing, obviously. And that's why we're doing it. That's why we're doing the Milligan for MOP campaign. And look, we know how the CFL voters vote. They vote this MOP award for the best quarterback, generally speaking, or maybe in this case, the best running back, the guy with the best offensive stats. Okay, that's usually what it is. When Alan Pitts had 2,036 yards, the CFL record, he wasn't even his team's nominee. Okay, it went to the quarterback. It went to Doug Flutie, who had over 6,000 yards passing, which, don't get me wrong, is pretty damn impressive and very outstanding. But when a guy breaks a record like that you'll never see again, like, you got to give the receiver some love in that case, right? When you're seeing Rolan Milligan put up these numbers that you've never seen before, I don't know what to tell you. But I know the voters aren't going to vote that way, which is just garbage because it's a lazy thing to do. They're not actually watching the games. And I can tell you for a fact, a lot of media voters that will vote on this do not watch Saskatchewan games. They watch their home team games, and that's it, because that's their job. So they're not really watching. A lot of them do. Okay, I'm not saying that they don't all do that, right? But they're not watching every single game.
But
so
that's
a lot
why
of them are missing what Milligan is doing this year. And they're just looking up the stats and like, oh, Brady Oliveira had 78 yards and a touchdown on 10 carries. Really good average, decent amount of yards. Yep, check. There's my vote.
But that's why I think and like I said, I don't think we're actually making a difference. But I think the fact that we're having this conversation, yeah, we're a distraction. I think it's important that us having this conversation, being as goofy as signs and songs and campaign videos and attack ads, it's causing conversation, which is now filtering out other places. Because, yeah, those guys that look at the stats might not have talked about, all of a sudden they tune into a game and you got Suits and Dusty going talking about Rolan Milligan as a MOP candidate. They're going, well, he's a defensive player. Like, no, what are they talking about? If you can get that narrative out there where the people are actually talking about it, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's better than them not talking about it, going, okay, who had the most rushing yards this year? Okay, they have Brady Oliveira. Check.
And especially in a situation like Milligan's, where it's not just the plain defensive stats, it's the fact that as a special teams tackle leader, he's doing X, Y, and Z as well. Because nobody's going to look at the special teams tackle numbers. That's just not a thing that anybody is going to care about when they're coming to an MOP battle. But when you factor in the leading defensive, other defensive stats, like he is, and breaking that CFL record, we need to make that noise, to make that, that obvious, to make it clear why he should be in that conversation. And the more noise we make, the better. And that's one thing we're good at, is making noise.
And
not necessarily noise people want.
Yeah, not good noise. But those special teams tackles are coming off the heels of minimum 2 plays where he's running full out, chasing receivers down. Not to mention how many drives go 4, 5, 6, 7 plays where he's on every single play and then has to run downfield again on punts. So let's not lose fact that this guy's running around ragged and he's playing 2/3 of the game.
And let's be honest, no one looks at special teams tackles even when it comes to voting on special teams player of the year. They're looking at who's kicked the most field goals. Yeah, field goals, or who's got the most return touchdowns. No one cares about tackles.
Yeah. So that's why we're doing this campaign. You'll see it on social media. We found our Instagram password, which was great. So now we're back on Instagram again. Piffles Pod.
How did we forget password 1?
They made us change it, and I'm pretty sure it was password 2. But we had to change it again. So yeah, it's password 3 if anybody wants it. We'll have to change it again. I guarantee you know what's coming up next.
Yeah, password 4 now.
Yeah. But
we should have gone with password 0 because then we know it would have been locked down.
There you go.
I'll be here.
But we're doing the campaign. It's on social media. You've seen the pictures, or posters, and all that kind of stuff. We are doing yard sign because it is election season, especially here in Saskatchewan. We have our municipal, we have the provincial election, we have a federal election coming at some point. So it's election season, and we're having fun with it. We know it's not going to sway the voters, so calm down. If you're just saying this is it's a stupid idea, but you know what? We're going to sell these yard signs. Okay, $20. Proceeds go to CFL Fans Fight Cancer. That is the most important thing out of this whole thing. Is we're going to get a bunch of yard signs and be stupid on social media with them, but we're raising money for charity. And with our track record, that's why I wore the Jesus Sprinkles shirt. It's a good cause, right? So that's what this is all about. We're having some fun with it. So if anybody like Unrider fans who hide behind fake pseudo names want to say that this is a distraction to Rolan Milligan, which it's not, if you want to do that, or say, look, guys, this isn't how they vote. Yeah, we know that's not how they vote. Okay. We're just having fun with it. And that's all this is. Okay. But if you want your own yard sign, if you want your own yard sign, please let us know. DM us on social media, send us a message. Hey, I want one. We're trying to arrange pickup in Regina if possible, because shipping these might be a nightmare. So I know that kind of limits where it goes to, but we can work with you on that though. But I think it'd be cool if we saw a couple of these at a game, one of the last 2 games. How cool would that be? And a little birdie told me that a few of these signs might be signed by Rolan Milligan Jr. So that'd be a pretty good little prize to have. So if you were looking at doing something like that or something fun, get a yarn sign. Don't put an orange one or a blue one or a green one or a red one or whatever. Get this one on your yard. This one's fun. That's right. This one's fun, and you help fight cancer as well. So I mean, come on, it doesn't get any better than that.
There's 2 things the Piffles Podcast does well. It's doing dumb things and raising money. I noticed that I didn't say podcasting is any of them.
No. And usually 1 and 2 go hand in hand. So anyway, jump on board the #Milligan for MOP campaign, and let's just have some fun with it over the last couple weeks of the regular season. Speaking of the secondary, Rolan Milligan in the secondary, I do want to talk about it. Maybe we'll talk about it next week when there's a bye week and we don't have a game to look forward to. But the need of an impact safety, I think the team really needs it. So we'll hold off on that topic. We'll do that next week because I do want to get in depth on that a little bit. Good news from this Rider game, obviously, besides clinching the playoffs, there was no new injuries. So that in itself was a win. We did find out that Sean Bain Jr. is out for the season with his knee injury. We kind of figured that with
his backwards knee
went. Yeah, exactly. But most importantly, no new injuries in this one because the team, the depth is there clearly with guys that can play, but we don't want to keep testing that. anymore. We don't, not at this point of the season. We need to start getting guys healthy, which is kind of what's happening now. So no new injuries. Great news out of the Edmonton game. And one other note for the Riders here, just on the opening kickoff, one roster move, they signed a defensive lineman, Canadian, Benoit Marion. He was with Corey Mace in Toronto in 2022. So a little bit of familiarity and just more depth on the D-line going into, the cold weather. So the more fresh legs you can have on the D-line, the better. So whether he makes it to a game, we don't know, but at least there's another body there for you. Well, that's the opening kickoff presented by Kathy Festian of Royal LePage Regina Realty. Let's jump to our Churchill Brewing Company odds and end zones. And what the CFL is going to do, and they're probably going to announce it tomorrow on Wednesday, another category. But the team nominees are being announced for awards for the end of the year. At least who's eligible. So we got the Rookie of the Year nominees this past week. So I'll list them off. This is what the CFL gave us. And these are in alphabetical order. There's no rhyme or reason to these other than just starts with A and ends with W in this case. The ones eligible for Rookie of the Year are Ajoa Joe, CJ Avery, Eric Black, who has played, 2 games on the D-line, Jacob Brammer, Jack Cohn, who's thrown a big total of 0 passes, Del Duncan Busby, Nick Jones, Dante Myers, Aubrey Miller Jr., who was actually with Edmonton for the first half of the season, Clint Rakovich, Trevor Reed, Malik Straker, and Nick Weeb. So that's who's eligible. My question to you guys, out of these names, and there's some pretty good names on this list, who should be the Rider nominee for Rookie of the Year?
I don't think there's any question in my mind. It should be Trevor Reed. He's absolutely
okay. Then I think all three of us are on the same thing. I thought I was going to be the oddball here, saying offensive line.
Yeah, it's weird to have an outstanding rookie award going to an O lineman, but he's been a stalwart presence on that tackle spot, so he'd be my nominee. Dante Myers would be a close second if he stayed healthy and continued putting up the numbers, but that's part of it.
And Keyshawn Johnson doesn't fit in with this because he was on NFL rosters before. So that's why he doesn't qualify for Rookie of the Year.
Honestly, I think if CJ Avery would have stayed healthy with his start at the beginning of the year, I think he would have definitely been in the conversation. But yeah, like Trevor Reed came in and has been an anchor in that spot, in a spot they could not find a person over many years.
We've been harping on that for the last couple of years. Find a left tackle. They did. So obviously he's the guy. But when you look at this list, though, these are some really strong names. Ajoa Joe was making a name for himself before he got hurt. CJ Avery, of course. Jacob Brammer's been really good until he got hurt. Del Duncan Busby stepped up the last little bit. Nick Jones has played really well on the offensive line. You mentioned Dante Myers. Clint Rakovich. Now the ratio doesn't really allow him to make the roster, but he was playing pretty well in a blocking type role. Malik Straker on special teams starting the year was excellent. So, and
a little love to Aubrey Miller as well. He's been stellar on special teams for us.
Yes, he has.
And he basically told Chris
special
Jones
teams tackles matter.
And he laughed at Chris Jones getting mad at him. So anybody that can piss off Chris Jones is a friend of mine. But when you look at this list, though, these are guys that have come in and had a major impact on this team. So the scouting's doing something right. Jeremy O'Day, Kyle Carson, the assistant general manager, and their scouting department have done a very good job of identifying talent that can come in and play immediately and make an impact. So
Alex.
Over the last couple years,
poor misguided person. Everyone knows it's Corey Mace is the reason why this team is so good and why these players are so good. It has nothing to do with Jeremy O'Day.
No, because if the internet's taught me anything over the last couple of years, Jeremy O'Day should have been fired. Now, Jeremy O'Day does deserve some of the critique from the last couple of years. Absolutely, he does. And I'm sure he'll be the first to tell you that. That is his role as general manager, is to bring in talent. Obviously, the talent wasn't good enough. That said, look at what he's done in the draft over the last couple of years. Look at these guys he's bringing in this year. Like, they've found some superior talent. And we have guys that can play. The next man up from this team, like obviously you never want to see the amount of injuries we've had, especially on the O-line this year. But now all of a sudden, when everybody starts getting healthy, Zach Fry and Peter Godber were practicing. You have Jacob Brammer coming back. You have potentially Jamarcus Hardrick for the playoffs, ? Which we'll talk about in a little bit. Plus, you have these guys that are playing right now. Noah Zer's been really good at left guard. You have Nick Jones at right guard and Trayvon Tate at right tackle, who was our 6th right tackle. These guys, all of a sudden, that's a good problem to have when you have that much depth on the O-line. So, I mean, sometimes it does take the injury for a guy to get a chance, obviously. Greg, you know that as a New England Patriots fan. Sometimes it takes a guy getting KTFO'd for, the GOAT to come in. But
and then so many good seasons happen after that. And then now,
How's it going now, Greg?
Sadness.
But it's just kudos to the Rough Riders scouting team and the GM and the assistant GM. They've done a great job of identifying talent, bringing them in, and to the coaches to have them ready. We've talked about Edwin Harrison on this show, the offensive line coach, to have these guys ready to go the way that they have with all the injuries has been phenomenal. So management is doing a great job this year.
It helps that they don't have bowling captain Craig Dickinson weighing them down to close out the year.
Yeah, you can do that over in Calgary. That's good enough for me. Actually, speaking of the Stamps, I like their roster move that they did. They did make a signing. The Stampeders did, signing a quarterback. PJ Walker was the XFL 2020 standout or whatever it was, 2022. I don't remember. Parlayed that into an NFL contract. Started a little bit for the Panthers, I think.
Yep.
Bounced around a little bit as well too, but there was a lot of hype on him. Now he's coming to Canada, which I think is very much suited for his game, to be a mobile quarterback. He's got a rocket of an arm. He needs help with accuracy, but he has the tools to be a good CFL quarterback. Does this spell the end for Jake Mayer? I sure hope not. I hope Mayer's there for years.
Based on this season, I hope he is too, but I think you bring in PJ Walker now and get him signed to a contract because you want him in first thing into the training camp next year. I think Jake Mayer is probably as good as done in Calgary after this season. Which, oh well, I guess. But yeah, you're right. Walker, his skill set is definitely made for the CFL game. And I hated it when I saw it because I was like, that's actually a very good signing for Calgary.
Yeah, I like that signing.
When it comes to the potential for Jake Mayer to no longer be a Calgary Stampeder, I think I speak for all of Rider Nation when I say, damn. I loved having him out there. He was exactly what you said he's been for years. The prospect of somebody like PJ Walker is a little worrisome. His game is built for the CFL. It absolutely is. So the funniest situation would be him ending up here as a backup quarterback. Just to taunt Alex just a little bit.
Not before Chris Trevler.
I've said you did not like. Well, oh, something's wrong with Steve. Oh, he lost us.
Oh no, Steve, can you hear us?
Nope. Chris Trevler rules, says
And
Steve.
also, thank you for being such a big supporter and fan of the CFL and myself personally.
Yeah, he really can't hear us.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. There we go. My one headphone must have died. Cool. Perfect timing for that. I didn't have to listen to the Chris Trevler. Don't do it again.
I don't remember. Oh yeah. Jake Mayer back up in Saskatchewan. I've said for years he's a backup quarterback. While I wouldn't necessarily be opposed, I hope they can do better. That's not a guy that, especially if you're going to roll back with Trevor Harris next year and 2 straight years, he's missed significant amount of time. I don't want Jake Mayer to be the guy behind it. I'd rather it be Shea Patterson.
Can we go on my little rant on this?
You know how I feel about him.
Calgary got him from the Argos in a trade that wasn't announced because they swapped neg picks. And yes, I understand negotiation-less players is like trading Pokemon cards. It's wishes and dreams of guys you hope you can sign. But come on. Like, it is so dumb. Like, how did that even come up? Like, either don't say you traded for him or announce the trade. I think the only reason why they had to announce the trade is because there's apparently a conditional draft pick involved. So announce the trades. Like, the secrecy on this negotiation list is dumb. I hate it.
And it's so on brand for the CFL. Okay, well, you can have your rant on trades and negotiation lists. I get to have mine on the CFL and TSN panel. After watching them this last week in the doubleheader, it's time for some sort of refresh. Now, I know they're keeping Hinoc Muamba off the TV right now because he's on Traders Canada Live right now. No, that show was filmed months ago. He's not on that, but that's how television works, right? So they're going to try and keep him off the panel, probably for the rest of the year, honestly. Just because the reality TV show that he's on is airing right now. Jim Barker needs to go. Go somewhere else. We'll still hear you, Jim, because you're yelling into a microphone. We'll still hear you, Jim. It's fine. But go away. I know a lot of people don't like Bill Stiegel on the panel. I love him. I like Matt Dunnigan on the panel in the booth. I think he's a great personality. I think his just banter is fantastic. I know a lot of people don't like that. I personally like it. And Kate Burness, nothing wrong with her as a host, but with what they're trying to do, everyone's trying to emulate the NBA on TNT with Shaq, Charles, EJ, and Kenny. Everybody wants that. And it's fine if you can make it work, if it's natural. Those four people on the NBA on TNT panel, it's all natural, and it's fantastic stuff. When they're ribbing each other, they're actually ribbing each other. But they love each other, and they're having fun doing it. Most importantly, it's fun. That's not what's going on with the CFL and TSN panel. They're trying to force a square peg into a round hole, and it's just not working. Kate Burness is not that type of a host. She can be the serious host, and it works well, but when she starts messing around, it comes off as fake to me, and that's why I want some sort of refresh. When Matthew Shinetti was hosting, I know he's a really good on the sidelines reporter, but when he was hosting that panel, it was excellent. I thought he was fantastic doing that. When Laura Daikun was hosting that panel, it was a little bit of a different dynamic because she's not doing the zany stuff that, Kate and Davis Sanchez are doing, but it worked because it was natural. That's who she was. I just feel like they're just forcing things and they don't care. And then I watch segments like Straight Fire, which are awful. I love the idea of that because a lot of it's highlighting junior football and high school football and whatever else in Canada. And I think there should be a segment every week somewhere in one of the 4 games on junior football. I think that's awesome. Have the grassroots stuff there. But you're also, 12 years too late after you got mossed? Because that's exactly what they're doing. And I worked in radio for 10 years. It's a copycat business. Media is a copycat business. Somebody else in another market does something that works. Hey, we'll just rip it off and do it too and give it a different name. That's what they all do. But you got to make it work. You can't just force it. It has to be natural for it to succeed. And right now, to me, it's just not succeeding. So I'd like to see a shakeup. Obviously, it's not going to happen the rest of this year, but next year with the CFL and TSN panel.
Is there anything worse than hearing Jim Barker scream fire?
Oh, nails on a chalkboard.
I believe it's pronounced fire. Straight fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
The entire thing.
Whatever.
I'm very glad that we were at a whole bunch of away games in a row and we didn't have to witness that. Watching it on Saturday a lot.
So TSN, please just try with your production a little bit. That's all.
People can tell real. People can tell organic. The NBA panel on TNT, completely organic. The stuff they're doing on TSN is just over-scripted and forced. It's not even scripted. It's just forced.
Well, and you look at, and like I said, it's everywhere. Sportsnet with their Hockey Night in Canada, with Kevin Bieksa. That's natural. Everything that comes from him, it's great. Anytime you have Colby Armstrong, I know a lot of people don't like Colby Armstrong. He is so authentic, and that's what makes him good to me. Like he'll tell you some random stories about how Bill Guerin, or maybe it wasn't Bill Guerin, it was somebody, Gary Roberts, never had McDonald's before. Like it was just a really random thing, but it's such a good segment that's what makes it work. It's fun, it's entertaining, and that's what I think all panels should be. Anyway, that's my little rant on that.
We haven't had a good rant segment in a while. I kind of miss doing that every week.
Well, see, and that's the thing is it became forced and it wasn't authentic anymore.
Yeah.
So that's why it failed, right?
Gotta wait for things to really piss us off, and then we'll bring it back.
So you see where I'm going with this. So anyway, back to football, back to on the field stuff. Riders and Lions this week. The biggest game of the year, which we've said that the last, 3-4 weeks?
Every week.
Pretty much every game this year.
Every week during this week has been the biggest game of the year. You lose any of them, a whole different ballgame.
But this one is for second place in the West Division. Riders win this, they guarantee themselves a home playoff game. They could still catch first if Winnipeg loses out, but I don't expect that to happen. It's let them win out, and then we can go in there in the West Final and kick the crap out of them. But win this game, you get second. You can still get second if you don't win this game. If you're the Riders, you just need a little bit of help. You'll just need BC to lose at home to Montreal, and then beat Calgary in the final week of the year. But anyway, the Riders hold their destiny for a home playoff game. Big one at Mosaic Stadium. It's the Plaza of Honor night. It's Legends night. And Darian Durant, Roy Shivers getting their very much overdue spots in the Plaza of Honor. I can't wait to have them out there and where they belong in front of Rider Nation. They're actually going to be doing a signing at the Rider store at Mosaic Stadium on Friday, I think at 6:00. Roy and Darian there. So if you can make that, do that.
If you want a spot, might be a little bit.
Pretty much. I know I'm going to try and go there. I have Friday off, so I'm going to try and get out there. But two very deserving guys who I can't wait to see the video packages and whatnot and everything for them this upcoming weekend. But the game, the last time these two teams played, Justin McInnis went off, had 243 yards. My question to you guys, after seeing the secondary basically not change their schemes this entire season, are they going to tighten up? Because other teams have figured out what Justin McInnis has been doing. He hasn't really done a lot since that game. He's had a couple good games here and there, but he hasn't been that dominating self. Will the Riders secondary learn from every other team and find a way to tighten that middle of the field and take away Justin McInnis?
I mean, history over the last 6 weeks suggests no. That middle has been open nonstop. Like Edmonton attacked us all game long, and you could feel it coming play after play. Justin McInnis scares me, and he shouldn't. He hasn't been good since week 6, but he scares me.
I'm not that concerned about it for two reasons. The guy throwing the ball is different, for one, and Nathan Rourke, despite everything, has thankfully not as played as great, as good as VA was playing at the beginning of the year.
And how rude, Nathan Rourke saying you would never cheer for the Riders. Just how rude.
You know, I don't think you realize the CFL is a small business. You never know when those words are going to come back and bite you right square in the arse. There's only 9 teams. And if he keeps playing the way he is in BC, he may need one of those teams at some point in the future.
And two, the way this defense has been playing, yes, they've been leaving that middle open because they haven't changed the scheme, but they've been playing fairly tight coverage. Like no one has exploited it as much as McInnes did that one game. Everyone, yes, you'll get the occasional play there, but no one has lit up that secondary.
Now I'm curious what's going to happen because I saw a lot of coverage dropped by defensive linemen last week. Brian Cox Jr. was dropping into the middle of the field. Jameer Thurman, of course, as well too. But this is where I want to see a safety step up and be in that middle of the field, which has been primarily open against this defense this whole year. Nelson Lacombo, to me, he's not the answer at safety. He was playing much better at corner to start the year than he was at safety, obviously with Jaden Dahlke taking penalties and getting in the doghouse, not getting his spot back. And clearly Jackson Ford's not ready for it, I guess. But I want to see some plays from the safety position, because that's the one position that we're not really getting any from in the defense. And what better time than now when you have some very good receivers in BC who are not afraid to go over the middle. Make them pay. Hit them hard. Like, I want to see not quite a, Craig Butler or something, but someone that's going to be there.
Well, here's my question, though. If Lacombo is better in corner, which his play has proven he's been better at corner than he has at safety, why not shift an American to safety and keep Lacombo out in the corner? Like, it doesn't change the ratio to move him, because he's not a safety. He's really not a safety.
And as much as we don't like to see the Dahlkes of the world take their 15-yard unnecessary roughness penalties, you do need that guy over the middle who is going to take the body and make somebody regret, those 10, 15 yards up the middle that teams are just taking at will right now, because there's nothing to fear with Lacombo at all. He's going to hug you down to the ground at best. You need somebody that's
pillow down,
right? Like, he's singing about a lullaby on the way down. There's nothing scary about the middle of our defense right now. Once you get past the linebacking core, there's no fear there. There's nobody looking over their shoulders. You hear footsteps, you giggle, and you keep running.
Lineup changes. Of course, it's only after one day of practice here that we've seen, but guys are getting healthy. People are returning, which is great news. AJ Ouellette was back practicing. He's eligible to come off the 6-game injured list this game, so I imagine he's probably going to be the starter. He was taking number 1 reps. Raquel Armstead was also in full gear. They listed him as limited, but if they can find a way to get AJ and Raquel Armstead on the roster at the same time, I know it's not going to be cold this game. I think the high is like 14 degrees. Like, that's a good mid-October day here in Regina. But in 2 weeks against Calgary, and then in the playoffs, in the semifinal, and then potentially the final, weather's not going to be as nice. You're going to need, a little thunder and lightning. And to me, that's what these guys can do. AJ Ouellette's run up the middle, run off guard. He's that kind of a running back. Raquel Armstead can be that cut guy who jumps out to the outside and can run off tackle. If you can have both of them even on the field at the same time, just to apply that little bit of pressure and confusion on the defense, it'll work wonders for this O-line. But both those running backs getting in some work, and then their favorite players, the offensive linemen, the guys making the holes for them. Some good news here as well. Zach Fry was practicing at left guard. Jacob Brammer was taking the number 1 reps at right guard. Obviously, he did that a couple weeks ago and then didn't play last week. It was Nick Jones again. But the team's really high on Jacob Brammer, so they really want him to be on the right side of the O-line. So 2 more guys back there with Trevor Reed at left tackle, Logan Ferland at center, and then Trayvon Tate at right tackle. And more good news, Peter Godber was in there a little bit as well. So going forward, it won't be for this game, but going forward, if you can get Peter Godber back and then you have Zach Fry at left guard, the changes that it makes to this offensive line and the ratio as well too, which would allow an AJ Ouellette and Raquel Armstead to both be on the roster, would be absolutely massive for the Riders. So I want to get your guys' take on the offensive line and guys coming back at the right time.
That offensive line is huge. We've been talking about it all year. We've just been rotating offensive linemen constantly. And yes, Ferland has been stepping in very good at center, but he's better at guard. So bring Godber back, bring Ferland back. That just makes that line stronger, especially now you got Reed and Tate going. And then, put Fry at right guard, completely change that ratio, and we can get those guys back on the roster that we've had to hold off because of the ratio issues.
Just punching Logan Ferland out to guard as opposed to holding him at center, I can't even begin to imagine the holes they can open up out there for Ouellette or Armstead or Hickson or whoever happens to be running the ball. We've said all along we need this team to get healthy as we get towards the playoffs because they're succeeding as they are, but there's still room to get better, and these guys will take them there. And the ratio changes alone just make it massive. But for some reason, I forgot Peter Godber was here. I don't know why. He's the one guy you didn't hear about on the injured list. You kept hearing, when's Brammer back? What about Hardrick? What are we doing here? But Godber just kind of reappeared at practice. Like the elf on the shelf, and he's just back all of a sudden. It's a good problem to have. We've got 9, 10, 11 good offensive linemen all of a sudden.
He muted himself.
I did too. That we can shift in there as people get healthy. So
he's going to start bad-mouthing
muting myself.
I thought you were just going to start bad-mouthing them. Talk them up how they're so good, and then put yourself on mute and be like, those guys suck. I don't even believe that.
Mute yourself in the middle of a sentence. You're just talking.
I'm not even sure how I did that.
I'm
just having all the technical problems today.
The fact that if you're watching this, you could see him move his arm to go in and mute himself. And this is the IT guy that we hired. My God. Good news as well, too, for receivers. Mitch Picton put in a full practice. So if he can get back on, I know he'd be the backup receiver, but that's a pretty good backup Canadian receiver to have around and rotate in going forward, right? So Keyshawn Johnson was limited in this first practice, but I'd imagine that's more of just kind of a maintenance day, nothing serious. Two guys that did not practice, though, CJ Rivas, obviously with a knee injury, came back last week and played. That's a maintenance day, obviously limit his reps and just keep him fresh for game time. And Adam Auclair, they listed him with a knee injury. That one, I don't know if something happened in the game that I might have missed against Edmonton, but
it's at this point in the season, a vet, they're all banged up.
Yeah. Yeah. If you can give him the extra day off, then I mean, why not? Right. Steve, before you needed to
starts, the concern starts if you see them on that did not participate list tomorrow when this show comes out. The first day I'm hoping is all just maintenance days.
Steve, you did mention Jamarcus Hardrick before you muted yourself talking about the O-line. He actually went onto the field and was helping with the O-line in week 1. Didn't participate in any drills, so not quite ready to return yet, obviously. But maybe there's some hope for potential playoffs with him. We'll obviously see what happens there over the next couple of days to see if he gets out there and it's on pads or something. But last time I saw him, I mean, that was back in August, but he was still limping pretty hard there. So, but if they can get their right tackle back, again, at the right time, they're getting these guys back, especially on the O-line, to get back to where we wanted to be at the beginning of the year with who they have in mind for starters is absolutely huge going forward.
We've come a long way from Micah Johnson having to play their offensive line again.
Like, I think the only one who's not going to be back on the defensive line is Philip Blake, which is wild.
Another guy I
Ryan-
forgot.
And Ryan Sevier.
And Sevier, yes. I forgot
Again,
about him.
Two guys that were all-stars not too long ago that were probably going to be starters in our sixth. And after week one, Sevier came in and started, and it was just a mess. But this is a good problem to have with these guys starting to come back. So, and again, we talked about the depth and how some of these young guys have played this year. And again, I'll pump his tires. I'll continue to do it. Edwin Harrison, the offensive line coach, has done a fantastic job of getting these guys ready to go. So if they can start getting these guys back against a few of them back anyway, like I said, Ouellette, Reichwell Armstead, Zach Fry possibly as well too against BC. This is the game you need them for. This is the game that I don't want to say go all in for, but you get that home playoff game, then you have a bye next week, then essentially a game that may not matter against Calgary to end the year. You can play starters for a quarter and then just rest them the rest of the way. And it's almost like having another bye week going into the playoffs against BC, more than likely. So things are trending up for the Riders, and it's nice because we've come a long way from when we were 5-1 and everybody getting hurt to, the 6-1 stretch. So
Remember when people were saying we should pack it in the middle of that losing streak? The season was over.
They're the same people
Where are those people now?
They're calling us a distraction is what they're doing right now. Anyway, but let's do you have the spreads open, Greg?
I do.
All right, well, let's do our Piffles picks.
Piffles Picks.
Well, folks, when you're right 52% of the time, you're wrong 48% of the time.
Another
Our
perfect
situation,
week for me.
50% of the time.
Yeah, both me and Greg 50% on the season, tied with Jeff Fairholm for best winning percentage at 500 this
Looking
season.
at this 35 and 35, there's only 11 games left to pick. That is, I can't believe we're this far into the season. And it's like that just kind of just sealed it for me right there. There's only 11 games left.
Yeah, we're down to the final 3 weeks. So week 19, and it's a full slate of games, 4 games, obviously with the Thanksgiving Monday game happening here with Ottawa and Montreal. But we'll start on Friday night, and a game that's big for both teams. Toronto at Winnipeg. Toronto can clinch a playoff spot here with a win. Winnipeg would clinch first place with a win, and it's another sellout. I think it's their 4th straight sellout in Winnipeg, which is excellent. Obviously, you want tickets sold in the CFL. So good on them for showing up for their team. So Toronto at Winnipeg. Maybe I'll take the first stab at this one for guessing the spread. I'm going to say it's Winnipeg by 4.5.
Pick my number. Let's go with 3.5.
Jeez, they were all 4.5 last week. What the heck?
I'm taking Toronto. I want number
Really?
1. Take Toronto.
All right.
I hope Chad Kelly goes, 10 of 36 and 6 interceptions. All what's his name? Kadeem Carey back there.
Yeah, Carey and
bunch of touches.
Yeah.
I
Greg, you'd
think
be surprised. Yeah.
I think Hamilton has another week of while they're on the bye week, hoping they can still make the playoffs. I think Winnipeg beats Toronto and covers that number.
Since we all know football is scripted, to give Hamilton that extra week of hope, which is what the CFL wants, to keep as many teams in the playoff race as possible, I will take Winnipeg as well to cover that 3.5 point spread.
And also for the greater good.
For the greater good. Battle of Alberta, the final one. The Basement Bowl, the Watch Us Dance on Your Grave Bowl. I don't know what you want to call it. But this is going to be just an awful game. Awful game. Honestly, Calgary might as well start PJ Walker in this one. Like, he's going to be their starting quarterback next year, is my guess.
Well, no,
Just
that's the
start
dumbest
now.
thing is Edmonton's not even like hinting at who their quarterback is because they say they want to keep Calgary guessing. I'm like, a few weeks ago, you
No,
couldn't say who your quarterback was soon enough.
But now they said that it's going to be Trey Ford, and MBT.
Oh, they
won't
did
even
say?
dress.
Oh, I missed that.
And MBT
Oh.
isn't even dressing for this game. Like,
What are they
Chris-
doing? Is
Chris Jones was screwing up the quarterback situation there. Jarius Jackson hasn't made it any better. Like,
is Jackson trying to get both not only interim off his title but head coach as well?
well, and actually, that was my question for the Turf District podcast this week. Our friends over in Edmonton, they said send us some questions. I said, who's going to be the head coach next year? Has Jarius Jackson done enough to at least be given an interview? I don't know if he has. Yeah, they won a few games, but then they absolutely butchered the quarterback situation again. So this coaching staff as a whole, this organization clearly doesn't have faith in Trey Ford. They want a traditional pocket passer, which I know is not as fun and exciting as Trey Ford running around and throwing up miracles and getting Geno Lewis to come down with random 50-50 balls. But they were winning for the most part. They're not winning with MBT. They haven't all year. It seems pretty straightforward to me.
Look at their record over the last 2 years with Trey Ford versus without Trey Ford. And yet, for some reason, they cannot get away from him fast enough to whoever they want, whether it's, I can't even remember who they had last year.
Corn
Taylor
Pop.
Cornelius. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Corn Pop. And
Now I did see,
and now MBT this year.
I did see Eddie Steele have this discussion with a few different fans and Edmonton media, was that he has heard it from people in that locker room, from coaching on that team, that Trey Ford isn't ready and he doesn't really want to be that guy. When, like, yeah, it sucks that you're getting demoted to a backup, but when Chris Jones asks you or tells you, hey, come in for this package or whatever, and you basically flat out say no, okay, well then screw you. If you're not going to be the team guy, yeah, it sucks getting demoted, but in a pro sport, you have to be that team guy, especially in football, where every position is so vital. The NBA, one guy can make a whole team. We've seen what LeBron James has done with Cleveland, of all teams, and you can win a championship with Cleveland and a bunch of scrubs behind you, right? That's different. You can't do that in football. You need everybody to buy in and be that team player. And if you're only going to get, a couple plays a game, you have to be ready for it. And you have to say, yes, coach, I'm ready. Let's go. Let's do this. So if what Eddie Steele is saying is true, maybe I get why they aren't playing Trey Ford, right? So again, that's all hearsay. I don't know for sure, but I trust Eddie Steele, for being completely honest. So if you're not having a teammate buy in, well, see ya. That's what it ultimately might come down to. Anyway, Edmonton at Calgary. This is going to be a boring game. This is going to suck. I probably will not watch this game. I'm not going to lie.
Or this might be chaos football.
It might
which
be.
Which is the best football to watch.
The best NFL games are actually the teams that are the worst. I think it was a couple of years ago. It might have been 4 or 5 years ago. It was Jacksonville and the Raiders. Two awful organizations. Had a game. It was like 35-32. Like, it was a fantastic game, back and forth. And it was one of the best football games I've ever seen.
Chaos ball.
I'm not banking on it this time. I'll guess Edmonton by 1.5.
I'd go. Oh God, nobody's winning this one. Edmonton 3.5.
Calgary 1.5.
What? Oh, okay.
Where is it?
It's in Calgary.
Okay. Still ridiculous, but okay.
You know what? I'll say that the Stamps win this one. They'll cover. I don't know. I really don't know. They got to do something to give the fans some sort of hope going into next year. Even just that little glimmer, they got to do something.
I'm going Edmonton.
I want to go Edmonton based on because I think they've got the talent, but they're too chaotic right now. They don't know what they're doing. I'm going to go with Calgary.
I like how your reasoning is they don't know what they're doing, and as evidence, I give you the 2024 Calgary Stampede.
I don't know.
I would argue they actually know what they're doing. They're just completely
they're just
wrecking
bad.
that
They're
organization.
just really bad at it.
Yeah. BC at Saskatchewan. I'll be completely honest. I saw a headline from 3 Down Nation. I didn't look at the article. I didn't look at the spread at all. I saw that it was BC was a slight favorite. That's all I saw. So Steve,
Really?
I'll let you. I know that one.
Yeah, I saw the headline too. But yeah,
So I don't know what
with
the
that news. I'm going to go BC 1.5.
okay.
As I could go. I don't think I've ever seen a half-point spread.
Well, I'm taking the Riders on this one. I think they do clinch first place, although second place. Although anytime that the teams needed or had some legends in the building or something happened or whatever, and we always say this, they're going to show up for this one. They always fall flat, but I don't know. Something feels different about this one to me. I think this is good. I think it's going to be a close game. I really do. But I think the Riders pull this one out, and I mean, they'll win by. I mean, they'll cover the spread, obviously, but I think they win.
I think it's going to come at the end of a Brett Lother foot. I think the Riders are going to win.
I'm going to go BC.
He's really trying to catch us now. At this point, he's just trying to catch us.
Yeah.
No, this one is for the greater good.
All right. And then the final game on Monday, little holiday football, Ottawa at Montreal. Ottawa, they can clinch second with a win, I think.
They've clinched a playoff spot. No,
they have a playoff spot, but
I'm pretty sure they've clinched the second spot.
No, Toronto can still catch them.
Oh, can they? All right.
But I think it all depends on if Toronto, what their outcome is with Winnipeg. If they lose, and then
Toronto's only 1 point behind them, so they can't clinch yet.
Oh yeah, and Toronto has 3 games left, so yeah.
So does Ottawa.
I will guess that it's Montreal by 3.5.
5.5.
4.5.
Damn it! I knew I should have guessed that. Montreal has nothing to play for, but
they've got to stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
They have nothing to play for, but they're on a skid of their own right now.
I would like Montreal to spend the next 2 weeks stopping the bleeding when they play BC and then Winnipeg. Not so much.
Well, I will go with
last
Montreal.
couple of games. They lost to Toronto. They've tied Calgary. Like, they're not playing good football right now. So
I'm going to take Montreal.
Greg?
I'm also in Montreal on this one.
Okay, Ottawa.
Oh, look at that. Greg and I stay
Switching to Ottawa.
So Greg and I remain tied for first anyway after this one. All 4 same picks.
It's whether or not I can close the very, very large gap between the two.
Yeah. It's only 8 games with 11 games back.
Hey, there we go. So you're saying there's a chance.
There you go. All right. Well, we'll leave it there this week for the Piffles Podcast. Possibly you might see some hashtag Milligan for MOP signs at the game. I will warn you guys in advance, people watching, listening. I'm sorry. Steve and I are sitting together for this game, and we normally don't sit together for games, but when we do, bad things happen. Not for football. Just it's, I mean, things get said, things get tweeted. It's fun. It's chaos. You want to talk about chaos? When Steve and I sit together for a game, it's chaos. So
there's a reason we don't have season tickets.
And there's a reason why I'm out of town this weekend.
So I think it'll be a good one.
Part-time fan.
Well, it'll be a good one.
My
But you
parents were
might
moving.
you might see some of those signs. And if you want to sign, again, shoot us a message on social media. And we're actually going to have 2 tickets to give away for this game. So if you're listening, go to social media, retweet this show. That's it. We'll make it nice and simple. 2 tickets to this game to watch the Riders clinch minimum second place, and get a home playoff game against the BC Lions. But we'll leave it there. Piffles Podcast brought to you by our friends at Dairy Queen on Elphinstone Street and Sass Drive in Regina. Special thanks, of course, to Kathy Festian of Royal LePage Regina Realty and Churchill Brewing Company for their support making the show possible. Thanks for listening and watching on YouTube or SaskTel Max TV on demand. This is Ghost Behind Your Mind by Tyler Gilbert.
The ghost